you'll just have to forgive me and deal with it. And, I'm here. I'm up in this beautiful part of the Eastern Seaboard because I'm teaching at the Mayapple Center, and I really want to thank Michelle Slater and Kate Angus for bringing me here. I'm having a wonderful time at their workshop, and lying in bed at night and listening to the oak trees drop their little acorns on the roof, and it's really fantastic. It's been a great experience, and I'm drinking in the last little bits of summer. And, I don't really quite have a program yet as to what I'm going to read, so you're going to have to bear with me as I make my decisions. And I think I'll start with the first poem in the book. It's called Imaginary Number. And as those of you who have studied mathematics, higher algebra and other things, and you know that there is a number that is very useful in mathematics, which is an impossibility. And it's the imaginary number, the square root of -1. And that's the poem. Imaginary number. The mountain that remains when the universe is destroyed is not big and is not small. Big and small are comparative categories. And to what could the mountain that remains when the universe is destroyed be compared? Consciousness observes and is appeased. The soul scrambles across the screes. The soul, like the square root of -1, is an impossibility that has its uses. This next poem is called Trailing Clouds of Glory. And that's a line, as a lot of you might remember, from Wordsworth's Immortality Ode, and the stanza goes, "Trailing clouds of glory did we come from God who is our home," and the large-scale narrative of the poem is Wordsworth's remembering a certain sort of glory that passes away, and the quotidian sort of coming to engulf his life. And it's one of the great romantic nostalgia poems. And I guess I should tell you a little more about this poem. I wrote it when the legislature in Arizona passed that immigration law whereby anyone who, looked as if they might not be documented, such as myself if I were, walking around the Grand Canyon, looking as undocumented as I look. They could just, pull me over and ask for my papers. And when I was young, I was very political, and I used to be really indignant about stuff like that. As who wouldn't be, an assault on the Constitution like that? I mean, even if you, weren't someone who they could pull over, you would sort of, it's likely you would be indignant. The interesting thing was when I heard this law, about this law, I wasn't indignant, and instead I said to myself, wow, that's a great idea for a poem. So you can see how far I've fallen. It's like the darkest things in the world are just an opportunity for expressing myself. Trailing clouds of glory. Even though I'm an immigrant, the angel with the flaming sword seems fine with me. He unhooks the velvet rope. He ushers me into the club. Some activity in the mosh pit, a banquet here, a panhandler there, a gray curtain drawn down over the infinitely curving lunette, Jupiter in its crescent phase, huge, a vista of a waterfall with a rainbow in the spray, a few desultory orgies, a billboard of the snub-nosed electric car of the future. The inside is exactly the same as the outside, down to the MC and the yellow spats. So why the angel with the flaming sword, bringing in the sheep and waving away the goats, and the men with the binoculars, elbows resting on the roll bars of jeeps, peering into the desert? There is a border, but it is not fixed. It wavers, it shimmies, it rises and plunges into the unimaginable seventh dimension before erupting in a field of Dakota corn. On the F train to Manhattan yesterday, I sat across from a family threesome, Guatemalan by the look of them, delicate and archaic and Mayan, and obviously undocumented to the bone. They didn't seem anxious. The mother was laughing and squabbling with the daughter over a knockoff smartphone on which they were playing a video game together. The boy, maybe 3, disdained their ruckus. I recognized the scowl on his face, the retrospective maskless rage of inception. He looked just like my son when my son came out of his mother after 30 hours of labor. The head squashed, the lips swollen, the skin empurpled and hideous with blood and afterbirth. Out of the inflamed tunnel and into the cold room of harsh sounds. He looked right at me with his bleared eyes. He had a voice like Richard Burton's. He had an impressive command of the major English texts. I will do such things, what they are, yet I know not, but they shall be the terrors of the earth, he said. The child, he said, is father of the man. This one is called This Morning. I wrote it, I wrote it because I wanted to write a poem about what was happening to me right now. And I got up one summer morning and I started writing this poem. This morning. First, I had 3 apocalyptic visions, each more terrible than the last. The graves open and the sea rises to kill us all. Then the doorbell rang and I went downstairs and signed for 2 packages. One just an envelope, but the other long and bulky, difficult to manage, both for my neighbor Gus. You're never not at home, the FedEx guy said appreciatively. It's true. I don't shave or even wash. I keep the air conditioners roaring. Though it's summer, one of the beautiful red and conifer green Bayside fuel oil trucks that bed down in the depot by the canal was refreshing the subsurface tanks with black drafts wrung from the rock, blood of the rock sucked up from the crevices. The driver looked unconcerned. Leaning slightly on each other, Frank and Louise stepped over his hose and walked by slowly on the way to their cardiologist. Memoir. Orwell says somewhere that no one ever writes the real story of their life. The real story of a life is the story of its humiliations. If I wrote that story now, radioactive to the end of time, people, I swear your eyes would fall out. You couldn't peel the gloves fast enough from your hands scorched by the firestorms of that shame. Your poor hands, your poor eyes, to see me weeping in my room or boring the tall blonde to death. Once I accused the innocent. Once I bowed and prayed to the guilty. I still wince at what I once said to the devastated widow. And one October afternoon, under a locust tree whose blackened pods were falling and making illuminating patterns on the pathway, I was seized by joy, and someone saw me there, and that was the worst of all, lacerating and unforgettable. This is a sequence of 4 poems. And you will get the progression as we go along. The first one is called Hell. You'd have to be as crazy as Dante to get those down, the infernal hatreds. Shoot them where they live, and then skip town. Or stay and re-engineer the decrepit social contraption to distill the 200-proof elixir of fear and torture the what from the what. And didn't I promise under threat of self-intubation not to envision this corridor, coal tar black, that narrows down and into a shattering claustrophobia attack before opening out to the lake of frozen shit where the gruesome figure is discerned? Turn around, go home, just to look at it is to become it. Purgatory, the film. He was chronically out of work. Why, we don't know. She was the second born of a set of estranged identical twins. They met, hooked up, and moved in with her mother, who managed a motel on Skyline Drive. But always it was the other, the firstborn, the bad twin, the runaway, he imagined in the shadow of the vacancy sign, or watching through the window below the dripping eaves, while they made love or slept. The body is relaxed and at rest. The mind is relaxed in its nest. So the self that is and is not itself rises and leaves to peek over the horizon where it sees all its psychokinetic possibilities resolving into shapely fictions. She was brave, nurturing, kind. She was evil, she was out of her mind. She was a junkie trading sex for a fix, a chief executive, an aviatrix. She was an angel to the blinded and the lamed, the less than upright, the infra-dig. And she was even a failure. She went to LA to make it big and crept back home injured and ashamed. Purgatory, the sequel. They put him in jail, why we don't know. They stamped him postponed. But he didn't mind. The screws were almost kind. He had leisure to get his muscles toned, mental space to regret his crimes. And when he wasn't fabricating license plates, he was free to remember the beauty that not once but 1,000 times escaped him forever and escapes me too. Ghosts of a mist drifting across the face of the stars. Jupiter triangulating with the crescent moon and Mars. Prismatic fracturings in a drop of dew. Heaven. There's drought on the mountain. Wildfires scour the hills. So the mammal crawls down the desiccated rills, searching for the fountain, which it finds, believe it or not, or sort of finds. A thin silver sliver rises from an underground river and makes a few of the hot rocks steam and the pebbles hiss. Soon the mammal will drink, but it has first to stop and think its reflexive, impeccable thought. The thinking comes down to this: mystery, longing, thirst. This poem is called Guide for the Perplexed. I don't know, do any of you get Science News? Do you know that magazine? It's a weekly digest of all of the new discoveries in science, and I have been subscribing to this magazine for at least 20 years, thinking that I'll get an idea for a piece of writing from it. And I subscribe to it, and my wife always says, "Well, do you want to keep subscribing to this, Vijay?" I said, "Yeah. I have to have Science News," and they pile up and pile up and pile up, and then and she says, "We have to recycle these," and I go through them very quickly and then recycle them, and so in all of these years, there has been only one time when I have got an idea for a poem, and I read this story and I said to myself, I have got to build a poem around this. This is just so amazing to me, and that's this poem. And you'll see what the fact is that so amazed me when you hear the poem. Guide for the Perplexed. The bedroom slippers' silk linings, the dressing gown of brocade stitched with the zodiac, the pajamas underneath also made out of silk, for which how many individuals of the species be more I, having munched the succulent pale green mulberry leaves and insinuated a sack wherein to magnify themselves, were steamed to death from the inside out. The delicate fibers are intact. He feels their ripeness on his skin. He listens deeply into the night, which listens back. The birch log pops in the fireplace. The fetishes brood on the mantelpiece. The ice melts in the gin. And yellower and deeper than dandelion yellow, yellower and stronger than Moroccan yellow, the color almost of a yellow marigold is the yellow silk kimono she wears to greet the floating world. Moths on the wing clutter the starlight. Ghosts of dead moths are on the window pane and knee-deep in the ballroom, in social clubs and places of worship. They are proof, if anyone still needs proof, that awesome are the powers of humankind, who have taken this self-same moth and endowed it with a gene from the jellyfish so as to produce fluorescent silk, and all in the interests of beauty. I shall spare you, by the way, my exhaustive researches into the history of the Silk Road. I don't know, should I read for, half an hour? Is that, keep going? Oh, okay. Okay, you asked for it. Now we're going to get into the dark stuff. Oh my God. Yeah. As if. The title is the particle that introduces the subjunctive mood in a sentence. Not that something is true, but as if it were true. As if. Mother is excavating tissue from deep in her cerebral minds. Father is crying in his sleep. The terrible family secret that won't be exposed in these lines, because there is no terrible family secret, has sister and brother raving at each other. Finally, to dissect the well-meant lies and realize there's nothing underneath and nothing to reveal, and nothing is real but these facts, bright and emphatic. Mother in her cave and father sleeping, mother in oblivion and father weeping, sister and brother forever searching the attic for the terrible family secret that is not and never was, and is the cause, is the cause. The next poem is called Nursing Home. Its subject matter is evident from its title. Its form needs a little explaining. It's in 3 sections. The first section is a lyric that's very geometrical. The second section is prose. And the third section is play script. But it's important for me to say that it's not ever clear who is speaking in the play script. So it's a play script of voices that don't have identities. Nursing home. 1. She had dreams 50 years ago she remembers on this day. She dreamed about Bombay. It looked like Rio. She dreamed about Rio, which looked like itself, though Rio was a city she'd never seen, not on TV, not in a magazine. Brain scans done on her show her perisylvian pathways and declivities choked by cities, microscopic mercurial cities, made from her memories, good and bad, from the things she saw but didn't see, from the remembered pressure of every lover she ever had. 2. Unexpected useful combinations between cognitive psychology and neuroscience have fostered new observational protocols, not only for elderly patients in the Lewy body pathologic subgroup, but those discovered across a wide spectrum of dementias and dementia-induced phenomena, including but not limited to normal pressure hydrocephalus, NPH, classical Alzheimer's disease, AD, and the deformations in mental recognition and function, dear, eat the soup with the spoon, not the fork. The coruscating vision, who is that laid out in my bed? The spontaneous motor features of Parkinsonism. Synaptic patterns embodied in sparks, showers, electrical cascades, waterfalls, and shooting stars are increasingly revealing an ideology proximately to be fully established and suggestive links between processes strictly biochemical and ideational and linguistic explosions for which documentation has been massive, while analysis has, so far, been scant. While an adequate conceptual apparatus still remains out of reach, progress across a broad frontier of research has been sufficiently dramatic to suggest possible developments that will lead both to therapeutic remedies for distressed elderly patients and to a synthesis among various disciplines that have heretofore seemed not just incompatible, but in direct conflict with one another. Certain coherencies have been unearthed that have truly startled our consensus. 3. She doesn't know any better than to act the fool. Is she dead? No, she's not dead. Is she dead? No, I'm not dead, and I don't want anybody to think I'm dead. Do you think it's funny? Wonder why she acts like that. Is she dead? No, she's not dead, and I'm not dead neither. Is she dead? Is she really dead? No, she's not dead, but she's acting the fool. Are you really dead? No, I'm not really dead. I'm just acting the fool. I'll show you how I can act the fool. No, I don't think I look nice. I think I look purty. No, I'm not dead. I just act like I'm dead. What makes you want to act like she's dead? Do you think she's dead? Do you think she's dead, or is she just acting the fool? Trying to find something on a little lighter note, but it's hard. It's hard. Hard to find lightness here. Let's see. Well, it's somewhat lighter. Well, it's more sympathetic. It's more Hamish, as they say. It's called Bright Copper Kettles. I hope you all recognize that. Do you? Who doesn't? Raindrops on roses and whiskers on kittens. Right? I can go on singing it, actually. You know, I do Some Enchanted Evening really well. I would love to play Emile de Becque, in Summerstock in Connecticut. I'll come back next year if you guys can. You have a musical theater in this town. Yeah. Bright copper kettles. Dead friends coming back to life. Dead family. Speaking languages living and dead. Their minds retentive. Their five senses intact. Their footprints like a butterfly's. Mercy shining from their comprehensive faces. This is one of my favorite things. I like it so much I sleep all the time. Moon by day and sun by night find me dispersed deep in the dreams where they appear. In fields of goldenrod, in the city of 5 pyramids, before the empress with the melting face, under the towering plane tree, they just show up. It's all right, they seem to say. It always was. They are diffident and polite. Who knew the dead were so polite? They don't want to scare me. Their heads don't spin like weather vanes. They don't want to steal my body and possess the earth and wreak vengeance. They're dead, you understand. They don't exist. And besides, why would they care? They're subatomic, horizontal. Think about it. One of them shyly offers me a pencil. The eyes under the eyelids dart faster and faster. Through the intercom of the house where for so long there was no music, the Right Reverend Al Green is singing, I could never see tomorrow. I was never told about the sorrow. A school day in October. I was in the corner of 39th and Park, waiting for a bus. Just standing on the corner, waiting for a bus. A man walked by, filthy, fragrant, with a mustache like Nietzsche's. He was screaming about the Dalai Lama. Then a woman came up to me saying, please, mister, please, mister. She had a boy in tow who was wearing a purple hoodie and looked about 9, still young enough to return a gaze, but not so young that he could count on a complete recovery. Distressed pieces of paper, bills of lading, starburst wrappers, flyers for the Paradise Club, littered the gutters and swirled in pipsqueak tornadoes spawned by taxicabs blasting downtown. On which of them was it written, I wondered, that consciousness leaks from the broken seals, the busted drum cases, the cracks in the housings, the fissures, and teems viscously across the surfaces of the world. Please, mister. Please, mister. I gave her $1. I didn't want to. I was in a mood to be stupefied by her condition. But I did feel sad for the kid. He should have been in school. It was a school day in October, and not walking the more punishing blocks of Park Avenue, the ones below Grand Central Station, where we came to beg. I think I'll read 3 more. And that will be, that's about right. This one's called Thought Problem. How strange would it be if you met yourself on the street? How strange if you liked yourself, took yourself in your arms, married your own self, propagated by techniques known only to you, and then populated the world. Replicas of you are everywhere. Some are Arabs, some are Jews, Some live in yurts. It is an abomination. But better that your sweet and scrupulously neat self emerges at many points on the earth to watch the horn moon rise than all those dolts out there turning into pillars of salt wherever we look. If we have to have people, let them be you, spritzing your geraniums, driving yourself to the haberdashery, killing your supper with a blowgun. Yes, only in the forest do you feel at peace, up in the branches and down in the terrific gorges. But you've seen through everything else. You've fled in terror across the frozen lake. You've found yourself in the sand, the palace, the prison, the dockside stews. And long ago, on this same planet, you came home to an empty house, poured a scotch and soda, and sat in a recliner in the unlit rumpus room, puzzled at what became of you. I've been hearing this knocking, and I thought it was coming from the audience, but actually it's me and the mic, right? I'm speaking too closely into it. Have I been annoying the hell out of you all this time? Yes. No. Too polite to, I heard the people in Connecticut were very polite, but I had no idea, In New York, they would have away from the mic! Anyway. The Descent of Man. My failure to evolve has been causing me a lot of grief lately. I can't walk on my knuckles through the acres of shattered glass in the streets. I get lost in the arcades. My feet stink at the soirees. The hills have been bulldozed from whence cameth my help. The halfway houses where I met my kind, dreaming of flickering lights in the woods, are shuttered. I don't know why. Try, say the good people who bring me my food, to make your secret anguish your secret weapon. Otherwise, your immortality will be an exhibit in a vitrine at the local museum, a picture in a book. But I can't get the hang of it. The heavy instructions fall from my hands. It takes so long for the human to become a human. He affrights civilizations with his cry. At his approach, the mountains retreat. A great wind crashes the garden party. Manipulates singly neither his consummation nor his despair, but the two together like curettes, and peel back the pitch-black integuments to discover the penciled-in figure on the painted-over mural of time, sitting on the sketch of a boulder below, his aching sunrise, his moody, disappointed sunset. And I'll end with this one. It's called The People I Know. Your friendship has meaning for me, the people I know say. But you didn't create me. In and of myself, I'm just like the water pouring through the spillway, or the bird on that wire, bright yellow with elegant black piping. Which is to say, my relationship is not to you, but to my limitless surroundings, and it suffices. The days when nothing or nothing much happens are the ones they can't forget, the people I know. They take the car in to get its oil changed, its tires checked and rotated. She at the grimy counter and he out back jimmying the hydraulic lift aren't speaking to each other today. Two people who live in the world, our world, hate each other everlastingly today. Anger is blossoming from the heart of the trivial, the pointless. Self-esteem is leaking and oozing over the concrete floor to pool around the feet. Its color is the pink color of antifreeze. The air is stringent with the smell of antifreeze. I've experienced that feeling. I've felt that feeling too, the people I know want to say. But too long of distance, decorum, and self-consciousness govern the interactions they have with those who take care of their machines for them to break out of the cotton-mouthed suffocations of the same, of their sameness, which is, to be fair, mystifying to them. But, it's killing me, Jake. The pain is killing me. So the people I know wander out onto Autobody Avenue and think about the explosions of noise on this major artery of their city, the traffic in the proximate Imperium, the intricacies of the nitrogen cycle, the dance of the universe from the atoms to the stars. The people I know stare into the plate glass coffee shop windows at the abbreviated faces sitting at the counter. No one can tell me anything more about the people I know than what I know already about the people I know. One man I know is dining with a man he knows. One woman I know has met a woman with her exact name, who is from Bessarabia, though she herself is from Ann Arbor, Michigan. One girl I know is waiting to be born. One boy I know is taking a nap. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Vijay will now take some questions, and then I believe he'll sign some books afterwards. So thanks very much, everyone. Thank you. Any questions?
Anybody have questions? You know, I'm sort of neither fish or fowl now because I was slowly moving, I've been corrupted by the word processor. So I will handwrite, and then I'll make my way over to my machine and never make it back, you know. And it's unfortunate, and I think it's bad for me because I don't know what instrument to use, you know. But I do have handwritten stuff, yeah. But it's not coherent the way it was before.
Do you, can you tell us a little bit about your process? Like, do you write every day?
Well, I'm a kind of, you know, I'm a tortured writer. I write every day, but I very rarely get anything done. You know, the ratio of my unfinished poems, some of which are, you know, pretty large fragments, to finished poems is about 10 to 1, you know, and then there are periods that I go through where I don't kind of, you know, the last 3 months I haven't really been writing at all. Every time I sit down to write, I just get so distracted by all sorts of things that are happening to me that I kind of, you know, can't really manage it, and I've been moving around. I always say I'm going to write every day. And actually, I shouldn't be saying this because I always tell my students I write every day. And I have students in the audience, you know. But now you know, now they know. Yeah. Hello? Yeah? In the back there?
At what age did you write your first poem?
What?
At what age did you write your first poem?
I was, you know, I wasn't like Pope. I didn't lisp in numbers. I was kind of probably about 16. You know, from the time I was about 14, I wanted to be a writer. I knew that, you know, and you know, my family are scientists, and you know, it was expected that I would become a scientist too, you know, preferably a mathematician, and you know, so when I was writing, you know, for a long, long time, it was kind of something I was very conflicted about because, you know, I knew this constituted a really serious rebellion against my parents, and you know, and so I wrote fiction because I thought fiction was more, you know, seemed more normal than poetry. You know, sort of, you know, and you could actually make money from it. Right? Yeah.
How did your scientific parents handle your wanting to be a writer?
Well, they think it's great now, you know. I think it's fantastic, you know. Said, well, we had to wait a long time, you know, but no, I was, you know, I got much wilder than poetry. So when I actually started seriously pursuing a career in literature, it was for them a return to sanity and a return to themselves, you know. because I really, I graduated from college when I was 20, and I hitchhiked out to the West Coast. This was in the days when you could do things like that, and and really had an incredibly adventurous life that caused them great anxiety. Well, it would have caused them great anxiety, but I didn't really tell them what I was actually doing. So, when I came back and moved to New York and actually went to an institution and got a graduate degree and was pursuing a career, they said, well, at least he's, doing something we can remotely understand. So, yeah.
One of the remarks you made just stays with me, and I guess it's jarring to me. You said, during my early days, I was political. And I don't know what that means. How does one stop being, quote, political? And I mean, I think your poetry is political.
Right.
So what is it, why did you say that? What does that mean?
Well, I said that to get a laugh, because as political as I've always been, I've always preferred to make people laugh than to, change their minds and make them into better people. And that's a fault of mine, But also, there has been, it is sort of I really did when that immigration, I can't remember what the number is now, and I did notice in myself when I saw that law, a certain kind of weariness that made it possible for me to look at it ironically rather than look at it the way an activist would, right? And I looked at it the way an activist would, but I sort of, I really, I think my first response was indignation, but then I thought, oh, I can really play around with this idea. I can turn it on its head. I can make it ironic. I can sort of turn it inside out and do something with it creatively. And so I guess, that would suggest that my politics is now modified by irony. But that, I don't know if that makes it less powerful or more powerful, because I actually do think I'm still political, and the book is a very political book, I think, I think people who've gotten angry at it have gotten angry at it because they sense, that underneath all of the joking, really, there's a militancy to me. And there is, definitely. So yeah, I just say that because there might be government agents in the room. I'm not political, I just.
How come you just said you like to make people laugh, but 90% of the poems that you just read are very, very dark?
I know. Well, I think they're funny, but most people,
Do you really think they're funny?
Do you really think I think they're funny? I wrote, I wrote a poem that's in my first book, and I read it, soon after the book came out, and I introduced it as the most depressing poem I've ever written. And this woman came up to me after the reading, and she said, "I thought all your poems were depressing, Vijay." I was like, okay. So yeah.
How did you happen to transition from fiction writing to poems?
I wrote, when I was in my early 20s, I was working on a novel. I was living out in the Bay Area that was far too ambitious for me. I was really influenced by, the French New Novel by Robbe Grillet, by Nathalie Sarraute, and by American writers who were influenced by them, like, say, John Hawkes. And it really, I should have been writing a coming-of-age story at that age, but I was overdeveloped as a consumer of fiction and very underdeveloped as a teller of my own story. And that gap led me to make decisions about the kind of fiction I wanted to make that were not good decisions. And so the novel really was something I couldn't finish. I couldn't get through it. And it was a source of real frustration to me because by that time I had conceived a real burning literary ambition, you know, and out of that frustration, I sort of fell into silence, and you know, and also there were some women then who were really not very nice to me, and things were just kind of a mess in my life, and the novel had failed and stuff like that. So I removed myself from the Bay Area and went elsewhere and licked my wounds and slowly healed myself. And when I got back into writing, it just happened to be poetry, you know, and I think I did that because I had written poetry when I was in college, and my poetry had been praised. You know, nobody had seen my fiction, but I had had a good response to poetry, and I think I needed to sort of rebuild my confidence by writing poetry. And you know, but fiction is always that thing, you know, that thing that I remember, and that was where I should have been. And it's very, yeah. You back here?
Who was, or maybe still is, your most inspiring teacher?
Gosh, you know. You know, I mean, I guess I would have to say Richard Howard, and he was, you know, not, you know, Richard Howard, I don't know if you know him. He's a, you know, famous and American poet who has had a long career, and I studied with him. I was in a couple of classes of his when I was at Columbia. And, you know, and I would never have called him a mentor. And he was not someone who, you know, Richard is not prone to taking people under his wing and, you know, nurturing them, as they say, you know, it's not, you know. But the intellect was so formidable, the cognitive abilities were so kind of extraordinary, and at the same time, he could talk about poetry so practically that I think I went away from every class of his having learned an enormous amount, you know. He's sort of, you know, I developed in quantum leaps when I was in his classes. And so I don't know, inspiring, I don't know, you know. People tend not to inspire me, you know. People tend to mostly depress me, but, you know. But they teach me things, and he taught me a huge amount, you know. So, yeah. That's not true. People do inspire me. I'm not, you know. I find Gandhi inspiring, you know. There's one person. There's a person. So.
How about Tagore?
No. 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 You know, there's just that one little book, right? And, you know, and Yeats really loved it, so they gave him the Nobel Prize. And you know. Naipaul, dark writer, but really good. You know, really, really good. Anybody else? Yeah.
Do you find that you sit down with an idea or something particular that you want to write about and use certain techniques to play around and try to make it happen, or do the poems sort of want to come out and then you play around with putting it down, or both?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's sort of, you know, there are long periods of stasis and then there are periods of flood, you know, and those periods of flood might sort of gather up fragments and poems that haven't been finished, that have, you know, that are really good ideas but never sort of gelled into something living, you know, something that sort of felt like it was alive to me. And then suddenly they will come alive. And so, you know, if you're a writer, never give up on any idea, never give up on any fragment. I mean, just make sure that all of the things that you have, however unpromising they might seem to you, are visited once in a while, because you never know when something is just going to spring to life and finish itself. And it's not even like you're doing it, you just sort of watch it happen in some mysterious way. It's really fascinating. The process is really mysterious and interesting.
We got
So-
any more questions?
What is the Mayapple Center?
It's in, I don't know, should I speak to this? Yeah. It's a center in Stamford which has its inaugural season, and it offers workshops and also sponsors lectures in Stamford, and is kind of committed to being what I would call a little small-scale gem of an artist center in the summer and an artist colony, and and I've had a great time there, and I have terrific students. We just I shouldn't say this because they're in the audience, and I don't want them to feel too good because I've had a terrific bunch of students. I really have. It's been great. Yeah. And, I think you can go to mayapplecenter.org or something. And, you can do anything on the web. You could probably take out your iPhones right now and find out all about it. Yeah. Yes?
Is there any comment you could make about the state of American poetry now? Because there's so many workshops, and then there's also a lot that's now online, a lot of poetry
Yeah.
journals.
Do you want the short answer or the long one? I mean, how much time do I have? Yeah. I think, poetry is, Whitman is right, it's the democratic art, and that Americans are poets, that's what they are, and it's astonishing how much good poetry there is in the country, and how various it is. The MFA programs, which everybody excoriates, have actually done their job in that they produce people who can really write across the country. I mean, I serve on panels in the Midwest, on the Eastern Seaboard. I've been out west, and I'm, judging a contest now. And it's amazing how good this stuff is. But I think at the same time, the ways in which poetry is distributed and the ways in which people fashion their lives as poets is fraught in the country, and I don't know what the solution for that is. But as far as the state of the art itself, it's extremely healthy. It's just really, it's surprisingly various.
Do you think it's a good thing that poetry is now, like there are online poetry journals that
Right.
sponsor a contest a week that's a response to a current event?
Yeah.
Is that a good thing? Do you see that as a good thing?
Yeah, I do. I do. And I am kind of an elitist. Should I be saying things like that? But I do sort of cherish the American experience, which really ultimately is a recognition, what's embedded in the Declaration of Independence. You could rephrase it and say, well, each of us has an original relationship to creation, which is independent of our, position in society. And, and in some sense, that is what Whitman imagined American poetry to be enabling, that original relationship to creation. And I think that kind of, that prophetic Whitman idea of what what America would be, and what, and he says in the preface to Leaves of Grass, the first edition of Leaves of Grass, that, we are the most poetical nation. And I think that's sort of, that's very much, what America has delivered, the promise that America has delivered. And yeah, there are all these journals and there's all of this kind of chaos and stuff like that, but when you open things out to that extent, what else are you going to get, except something that's verging on chaos? And if you kind of don't like messes, you probably shouldn't spend a lot of time contemplating American poetry. Yes?
Who is the poet that influenced you the most in your writing?
Well, I think the poet I most wanted to be and still want to be is probably Yeats. And, and Yeats never goes away for me. I kind of think he's a writer on the order of Shakespeare, stuff like that. The poet who I probably learned the most from is Elizabeth Bishop. And of course, Yeats is absurd, right? That's what makes him so great, that he can be so absurd, all that Maud Gunn stuff, and those politics. I mean, it was just like, oh my God, it's just dreadful. But still, it doesn't, when you get there and you see the power of the imagination and the power of the expressivity, it's just, all that stuff fades away. I mean, he's not someone I ever identified with as a person. But Bishop, yeah, I did identify with her. I very much, saw myself in her. It was a much more intimate thing, And in the things about Bishop that were very painful, I kind of recognized an image of myself. So, is that okay?
If you'd like to have a copy of your book signed, Vijay will sit outside and sign them now. Thank you.